The warrior specialization for End of Dragons, which I am now testing out in the beta. So remember, it's a beta. There's going to be changes from now until the release. And a lot of the beta specs are a little bit undertuned. You know, they can get a numbers change. But what's really important to remember here is that if something seems weak, that can always be balanced differently. But if the design is very good, then that's, you know, you can work with that. So I think that the design of the Bladesworn is actually really good. It's one of the more fun specializations I've played from the new batch. So let's just go into the mechanics and I'll show some gameplay as well. So essentially, Bladesworn loses one of its weapon swaps. So you can swap weapon out of combat, but when you're in combat, you get locked into one of your weapon sets, but you gain access to a gun blade. So you can't use burst abilities, but you have the gun blade now. And the gun blade is pretty interesting. It's like a shroud or a hollow forge form, and you have all these new abilities, and you get pretty much ammo or count recharge on each of the abilities. And there's a lot of synergy with ammo skills. So like your elite skill, it recharges all of your ammo skills from all of your profession skills by 1 ammo. And then you've got a trait here, Lush Forest, which recharges all of your skills when you run out of ammo on one of your skills. So it's kind of interesting because even though this kind of lends into like a shout playstyle, because shouts are generally ammo, so you get a lot of synergy with that, I feel like maybe there's a little bit of lacking in build diversity because of this and for other reasons. But it is kind of interesting because that is still a new playstyle, the whole ammo thing. And you could actually probably use rifle with this, but there is an issue with this specialization that when you use the gun blade, you have to pretty much leave it. It's like a weapon swap, right? But when you go into the gun blade, you have the dragon trigger ability, which shares your weapon swap cooldown. So I think that one of the biggest issues is that the dragon trigger, right, it puts your weapon swap on cooldown. So if you want to use dragon trigger, you can't swap weapons right after, and then you have to choose between using your main burst ability or leaving and going to your weapon set. So generally I just kind of put it on greatsword instead of trying out rifle, because if I'm going to leave my gunblade, it's usually because I want to escape anyways. So I just stuck it on greatsword, but I could see maybe if they change it so that there's not a sharing of cooldown there, or maybe it's less punishing, then maybe you could try out rifle, because the rifle has ammunition. So that is kind of interesting. But yeah, I just stuck to the greatsword. But let's go over the gunblade's abilities. So the first ability is your auto attack. You just do a little bit of damage here. It's actually not that bad, but it also has an explosion on it, and anything that has an explosion will give you a 250 ferocity buff, which is pretty good. It's high damage. Your 2 skill is just kind of like a melee attack that'll explode as well, do an explosion. I kind of feel like this ability should have a leap to it, maybe even a combo finisher leap, and that'll make it a little bit easier to land, because at the moment it's pretty slow, but I do like it still as like the melee attack portion, because a lot of the other abilities are kind of ranged. And then you have the 3 skill, Artillery Slash, which is a ranged high damage cripple. One of the best abilities because it just does so much damage and it can do it from range. One of the things that makes Warrior kind of difficult to play in a lot of situations is that it's full melee. And because it's full melee, you can easily get kited, you're kind of predictable. So I feel like this is really good for changing the playstyle and giving a different, you know, the things that you were weak against before, you're not as weak to with this playstyle. So I really like the skill, and you can just throw it out. It's easy to spam. And then you have Cyclone Trigger, which is a really interesting ability because it's really strong in melee range, and it also blocks projectiles. You'll see this little thing that is like swirling winds, and it also throws out these projectiles. So it's great in melee range. It's also kind of good at range, but The issue with it is I think that the projectile block is maybe a little bit too weak. It can maybe be bigger or last longer, but otherwise it's a really good skill. And what's interesting is that the damage of the cyclone trigger is right as soon as you press the skill. So what you can do is you can do like blooming fire, and that's the damage portion of that is near the end of that animation, and then the beginning of the animation of cyclone trigger gives you the damage. So if you're trying to do like combos and timing your damage to hit someone, you can use 2 or 4 accordingly in melee range to kind of like time it between evades, and it gives you that warrior playstyle that you really want where timing is important and playing around animations and stuff like that. So I really like the Gunblade's versatility there. And then the 5 skill is just a leap, which will give you Fury. Very good for repositioning because, you know, you're not the tankiest with this class. And it's also useful for doing a little bit of damage. I think mostly it's supposed to be disengaged because the damage is where you start, not where you end. And also I feel as if because that is the case, generally because what it'll do is it'll rush towards your target. I feel like it should not rush towards your target, and it should always kind of rush towards the direction you're facing. Obviously you can detarget it, but I just feel like you always detarget it anyways, so maybe it should just be like that always. But yeah, the Gunblade is pretty nice, but over time you're gaining flow, which allows you to use Dragon Trigger, and while you're in the Dragon Trigger like stance here, you're gaining this like this ammunition or whatever, and that'll increase the damage of your Dragon Slash. And you have 3 different Dragon Slashes you can choose. So you've got like this choice between a ranged Dragon Slash, which will just do a ranged attack, or you can do a melee Dragon Slash that will leap you to the target, or you can do a melee Dragon Slash that just does it right next to you. So it's sort of like you have to choose between them, and I like that. But the 3 is kind of hard to land, like it really doesn't hit anything that's moving. The 1 skill is a little bit more damage than the leap, but the leap is, yeah, a little bit more reliable, so I generally use the leap skill because it's pretty comparable. But yeah, the Dragon Slash can be modified with Unyielding Dragon, which will make it ignore blind, it will become unblockable, and it will stun for how long you've been charging it. So it's quite a good skill. As you can see here, the stun lasts for 5 seconds but is fully charged. But Dragon Slash, you generally don't want to be charging it fully because it's way too predictable then. And I feel as if the Dragon Slash doesn't really get you too much value for being fully charged anyways. A lot of people are saying that it should do a lot more damage. I feel like maybe it shouldn't do that much more because it does do quite a bit of damage. But I think people just need to be playing around using a non-fully charged Dragon Slash because it does give you a lot of utility through the stun. So it sets up damage. And yeah, there is that idea of stuns doing damage, right? So it's potentially maybe shouldn't do a lot of damage while stunning as well. So yeah, the Dragon Trigger is really interesting, but also while you're in Dragon Trigger, you get access to another set of ammo skills, which will give you Aegis, and that has no animation. So while you're vulnerable sitting here charging this up, you can give yourself Aegis, which can protect you from being interrupted. And you can also use Flicker Step, which is the only port that is available on the warrior class. And you can port around and sort of like position your Dragon Slash. So it's a lot of playmaking and mind games. I really like the Dragon Slash because a lot of people are thinking, right, like, oh, Dragon Slash, you charge it up and you have to like wait this long time to do your damage. But really, it's that you have the potential of using it whenever, and you can create like animation gaps in enemies where they think that you're going to attack and then they dodge, and then as soon as they dodge, you go in with your Dragon Slash. So it's really good at that, in my opinion. And the fact that you have Aegis when you go into Dragon Trigger makes it a little bit difficult for people to play around it because you can't be blocked. If they try to interrupt you, you can Aegis it if you time it very well. So I really like this. It's really fun. And the flicker step gives you this like RP where you're like, nothing personal, kid. So yeah, it's really good for the RPers. Yeah, so that's pretty much the skills, right? And the traits are kind of interesting. You get a little bit of protection and the ferocity, right? Yeah, this is pretty. You just get flow here, and yeah, we talked about the lush forest giving you a extra like recharge when you use ammo skills. You could also get barrier, but I feel like the lush forest is way better because it just means that you're getting more of the skills that heal you. And yeah, there's like healing here on Dragon Slash. And then this skill is kind of weird where it allows you to do like multiple Dragon Slashes. But generally in PvP, you're not going to be doing that anyways. So here's the build that I kind of felt was best. And I feel like a lot of people were using is like a strength tactics Bladesworn. And you just get leg specialist. So whenever you use your artillery slash, you'll immobilize on a 12-second ICD. Then in World versus World, you want Shrug It Off, but in PvP, maybe you would take Empower Allies or Warrior's Cunning, and then you take the Shout trait for a little bit more sustain. And then you have Might Makes Right, and you know this trait with the Mending Might and for Great Justice is going to give you a lot of sustain. And then Great Fortitude gives you a lot of ferocity, so I take that. And then Restorative Strength also gives you Might, and the Might gives you a lot of healing from, you know, the tactic synergy. And then your heal skill is a very low cooldown because it's on 25 count recharge, and you have 2 count recharge with that. So essentially you're going to be using a lot of these ammo skills, and you're going to be gaining those recharges back. So it has kind of a spammy playstyle to it, but it is really fun. And yeah, as you can see here, the elite that gives you ammo will allow you to, you know, use your heal skill a little bit more often as well. And you've just got a lot of might generation on this build. So the stats that I was using in World versus World were full Zerker and then Rune of the Pack. And I was taking the swiftness from the flow trait here as well. So that was giving me my swiftness because you're not taking discipline, which is kind of yeah, you don't have the warrior sprint, right? So you get immobilized, which a lot of warriors are not used to, so you got to kind of get used to that. But another thing is you have a lot of shake it off uses because you have, right, you get tactical reload, which is going to give you more shake it off, and then also you're just going to lower the cooldown of it just by lush forest. So you have a lot more Condi cleanse and a lot more stun breaks, even though I only have one of them, than you actually think. So it's a pretty good survivable playstyle in my opinion. Could use a little bit more damage, add a little bit more numbers to some of the abilities, but it's really fun for me. So yeah, the stats were just full Zerker, Pack Rune, and then I used a greatsword with battle and cleansing because the battle would give you, you know, more might synergy, and then the cleansing. So how the swap sigils actually work on the Bladesworn is it's right after your dragon trigger ends. So you can see here I go into dragon trigger and I'm going to use the dragon slash. You're going to see I get might before it lands. So that's kind of cool because you can actually use like vision sigil to get like crits on your dragon slash because it'll proc the vision right before it lands. And then also my cleansing would happen there. So a lot of times what I'll do is I'll just use Dragon Slash kind of defensively just to get my cleansing sigil proc. And yeah, it just does like unblockable, unblindable damage. So it's pretty much always useful to use it. And it's a mobility skill if you use the 2 skills. So in most situations, it's pretty good to use the Dragon Slash. So in PvP, I was using the Zerker amulet with Fighter Rune. Pretty standard, you know, it would just be really good with the heal skill here. And then I was using Sigil of Cleansing and Intelligence, but you could use something else like Battle there. So yeah, those are the build. I really think that Bladesworn is one of the more fun specs that they designed, and if they balance it a little bit better towards the previous existing specs, this is actually going to be a really fun spec. So if you guys like this kind of video, give it a like, subscribe, check out the links in the description, and I will see you guys next time.